One of the biggest byproducts of addiction is a lack of self-esteem. And it's a spiral. It's a negative spiral. I go and do the addictive behavior, right? Or I take the addictive substance. Everything tells me I shouldn't. I go down, I take it or I do it, and I end up feeling less than I was before. It's disempowering, right? It neuters us as men. And when we start looking at that and we can look at it right outside and go, not only am I better than that, I got something better to do. I got somebody better to be. The other side of that is the attractive magnetic force of doing the right thing the right way. People suddenly come into your life who are of that same being, that same nature, that same spirit. And suddenly you find this core group, these people that are on the same mission. They're the guys you high five every day because they feel that groove that you're on. They know you're with them and they also support you.
What is going on, guys? Welcome back this week to another amazing, very insightful and impactful episode of the Superhuman Life. As always, guys, I am your host, Frank Rich. And before we get into introducing today's guest, let me just remind you how incredibly grateful and thankful we are to have you here with us today. Guys, what a jam-packed conversation we are about to have here today with you. Talking about going from sick to superhuman, and what better title for a show than that, right? So we have on the show with us today a man who has changed the world, for lack of a better way of saying that. 19 different companies he has started and founded, and has had successful exits from many of them. Yes, I'm talking about Mark Effinger, Mr. Noots. Mark is a seasoned entrepreneurial and intrapreneurial business champion. Working with CEOs, company founders, and management remains a great passion for him. Now, he spent much of his 20s in the U.S. Air Force, playing with aircraft at a deeply technical level. They provided a platform for him to become an endurance cyclist, hand glider pilot, and also eventually led him to training in bodybuilding. Now, these adrenaline-fueled activities inspire the spirit and insight of what it feels to be indomitable and operate well under pressure and thrive while on the edge. Now, this has gone on to be a big part of the work that Mark is doing today. But before that, he had to experience a tragic death of his former wife from a painkiller overdose that put him down the path of creating these high-performance nutritional supplements. So starting working with addicts, he's then gone on to create formulas and products that are helping people learn to change their state of minds, that are helping them unlock their high performance within themselves. So we get a lot into Mark's story, his path into entrepreneurship. We touched on at the beginning the role of his father played in him and why it's so important for fathers to play an active role in developing and bringing out the best within them children. And then we obviously get into Nootopia, which is his newest venture in partnership with Biooptimizers, and how this can help you in making better choices, making better decisions, changing your state of mind, putting you in a state of gratitude, putting you in a state of motivation, putting you in a state of calm and relaxation, and how this can be beneficial if you're trying to reboot and rewire your brain, maybe from porn addiction or any addiction, and how this can also be a very valuable tool for you to unlock the greatness that is living inside of you. Because Mark and I both agree that addicts are high performers that just have not yet unlocked their greatness that's living inside of each one of them. So that's what we want to do with you today, is provide you those tools, tactics, and strategies with the conversation to bring that out in each and every one of you. So without further ado, let's get into today's conversation with the founder of Nootopia, Mr. Noots himself, Mark Effinger. We love you guys. We'll see you on the other side. Mark, my brother, welcome to the Superhuman Life.
Frank, you're a badass, man. Thank you so much for the invite. Appreciate it.
Brother, thank you for your time. And I know just based upon our intro conversation here, we are going to light this episode up today. I'm so excited about this. I have an interesting question where I want to start, though, with you is what nerve does a high school dropout, if I'm accurate with your high school dropout, voted least likely to succeed. So what nerve does that man have going on creating and starting 19 different companies and being a successful entrepreneur?
I think there's a combination of a good friend of mine and I, Eric Kinney, who's been in 5 companies with me. Eric is my geek on demand. He's the guy that makes all the programming go. He's the guy that manipulates the web. And Eric and I, years ago, back in I think it was 1995, we bought the domain dumbfounders.com. Because I think it's what you don't know that allows you to become an entrepreneur, right? Because if you did know how painful it was going to be, how lonely, right? How expensive. So I think that was part of it. The other is when I was in 8th grade, my stepdad said, dude, he goes, you'll never make it working for the other guy. And I said, and my stepdad had just bought into a company for no money down, $25,000 when he sells out. That was his commitment, right? And he bought into this company, a clinical laboratory. And he said that to me. He said, well, Jack, who's the other guy? And he said, oh, it's easy. He drives a Mercedes, a Cadillac, or a Porsche. And so I had a paper out at the time. I was in 8th grade. And I rode my bicycle by a tennis club, because tennis was like golf is today. And it was a parking lot full of Porsches, Mercedes, and Cadillacs. And so I literally parked it, went in and begged for a job. I said, do you have anything? He said, no, we don't have anything. I said, I will clean toilets. I will do whatever. They said, well, we need somebody to come in after hours and clean tennis courts. They have these humongous rolling fuzz eaters that basically pull the fuzz off the court that accumulates from the tennis balls. And so I started doing that after hours. And eventually I started cleaning Johns, and then doing rackets, stringing rackets, and just, and then opening up and closing the club. And of course I traded it out for court time. And I realized that if I could play the game, then I could meet the people who drove those automobiles. And so I would interview the shit out of them. It was great. I mean that in a really great way. It was I would say, what do you do? How do you like it? How long you been doing it? What is your, I didn't use the term spouse, but what is your significant other? Think about it. What's the worst part? What's the greatest part? And I got these wonderful, people that were obviously my seniors giving me some wonderful advice on what to expect in business and in striving for success. So, and again,
that's incredible.
When you don't have a high school diploma to lean on, you don't have a college degree to lean on, is I think that you try a little harder. You know what I mean? I mean, what I mean by that isn't that people with a fantastic degree don't try hard. Hell, it took something to get there. But I think that I had to just kind of like try to outperform everybody. So whatever job I was in, I ran. My dad taught me, you don't walk across the shop floor, even that says no running. You walk really, really fast and make sure that you're not that you outperform the boss, always edify them, and make yourself invaluable to the company. So whatever job I was in, I was doing that. And when I finally saved enough money while in the Air Force, I saved $32,000 by investing in oil, in what they've called steam augmented shale oil extraction. It's now called fracking. So I was doing that in 1980. I started investing in that, and I invested in silver and a couple of other small investments in the medical field. And thankfully those paid off. I took that $32,000, started a laser company, and here we are.
19 companies later, going from sick to superhuman, talking about nootropics. That's amazing, man. And I think, one of the biggest, things that I really got out of that was the role that your father played in the development. We have obviously a men's audience here. We have a lot of dads out there, because as you're talking about that, when you don't have the education, you work harder, I think that is half of the people, though. There's the other side of that is going to look at their life, their situations, and they're going to fall into a victim mindset, victim mentality. And fortunate you had your father around at the time to lead you not to go down that path. Is there anything maybe, based upon your experience, or maybe even your father today, right, Mark?
Oh yeah. I got three kids. Yeah.
So anything, to the listeners out there that are fathers or dads, maybe have young children, how can they begin to model and show their kids some of the lessons that you got from your dad?
My dad was a monk, a Trappist monk, when he was 15 to 18. So from 15 to 18, he didn't speak. And then he decided that he could do more positive, he'd have more positive impact if he left the monastery and praying and meditating every day, and actually started working directly with people. So he went to, he became a boxer. In fact, this is my dad right here. Let me see here. That's my dad. For those of you that can see this is a picture of my dad at 176 pounds, becoming a Golden Gloves boxer. And he quit boxing when he was taking on the Army heavyweight, or welterweight, Army welterweight. And my dad was a left-hander, and he led with his left. Normally you'd lead with your right, and then you'd follow through with your left with a hook or a jab or an uppercut. But he would lead with his left, and then he would follow through with his left. So he would bait you with his left, and then he'd really get you. And he got the Army welterweight right here in the trachea, broke his trachea. And the guy went down, started bleeding out of his mouth. My dad, helped rescue him, and they got him down, and he said, that's it. Because I come in peace. And I can't very well do that in this profession if I want to go further. So my dad taught me to be that warrior spirit, right? But that gentle as a dove. When he would talk to me, he would get down on his knee, right? So he's head height with me. He realized that I had he felt that I had some special thing. I was such a geek when I was very young. I got my first radio when I was 5.5 and my first laser at 9.5. And so he would nurture that. Like he would trade his blue collar work ethic. He'd go to the TV repair shop. They used to have these repair shops. You'd repair TVs. You wouldn't just throw them out, right? They wouldn't end up on your recycling bin. And he would trade out his time, like optimizing the heating and air conditioning system at the TV repair shop in exchange for broken TVs that he could give his son, right? So that resourcefulness, I learned it early on. I also learned bootstrapping pretty well, right? Like how do you start something with nothing, right? You get creative. You find people that you could trade out some resources for. That was really important. And the other is do the right thing the right way. Like do not compromise if possible in anything you do. When you start feeling like compromising is happening, find an elegant exit, treat everybody fairly. Don't scream and paint FU on their building and leave. Be a decent human being. And one thing you can say about my dad was, or one of the many things actually, is because I'm one of 6 kids, right? 6 kids. When you're a blue collar guy and you've got 6 kids, that is a burden. My dad never said it like that. We had family dinners every night, right? So community was huge. He paid me originally $1 and he upped it to $5 to memorize this very long poem written by a monk called Desiderata. It's a beautiful thing. Go placidly among the noise and haste. It's just a beautiful poem. I reckon everybody take a look at it. But it's just a beautiful thing about kind of really having a relationship with both your spiritual leader, like your spiritual head, and also being able to be a meaningful component of your society. So I know that was an extended response, Frank, but I could go in a million stories of my dad and how he taught me. So many things, so many cool things. Plus, he was funny as hell, and he had great style, great style, great artistry about him, and was an exceptional human being. Yeah.
Beautiful response, and thank you. And the way that you described him at the beginning, it brought me back to one of the things we were talking about before recording. We were talking about Huberman, right? And just his heart and his care and how much he just wants to show up and deliver and overvalue. And yeah, everybody watching on YouTube is seeing the man's face. I'll talk about Huberman quite a bit, the influence he's had on me and our work here. But at the same time, this soft, gentle man, like, is going to crush it in the gym. And that's the presence. And that's something I've really tried to model out in my life as well. And I think that's a great note there, great lesson for the audience, how you show up as a father to your kid, both from a strong masculine presence, but then that soft, gentle, caring side. And I love when you talk about he came down to your level. So he's not talking at you, he's talking to you. Dads matter, man. That's just a powerful story there.
I've had probably 24 father figures in my life, from my direct boss in the Air Force, who protected me from the commander because I was an entrepreneur. I wanted to start something, and that's not exactly in alignment with Air Force rules, to the guy at the end of the street when I was a little kid, who came from MIT and Xerox PARC, the same laboratory that spawned the Macintosh computer, and Apple. This guy came from there, and every night I would be in his garage using his soldering iron on trying to make electronics when I was 5 years old. And he was like, dude, this is cool. I would much rather have you here than out, causing trouble. And, I think we, Frank, you and I have an opportunity to not only nurture the kids that are in our periphery, right? Whether you've got, but also the men that we get to work with and be an example of how you would treat your children, right? And support your children, encourage your children, and be a discipline, encourage discipline with children. Because your discipline of your children done right teaches your children how to discipline themselves. So if you don't have that, right, it's a missed opportunity to help your child grow and understand how to navigate the world, because it's not going to be friendly all the time. And you need to be able to be in control. And I think that's one of your big messages, is, come on, man. This is not that hard. You've got a lot of tools you can work with to be in control, right? To discipline yourself.
We have all the tools we needed were gifted to us. Sometimes, though, they've been suppressed. Sometimes they've been beaten out of us. Sometimes we haven't found them yet. We haven't unlocked them, but they're all there. Every single skill, tool set, everything you need to succeed and make this a meaningful, happy, joyful, purpose-driven life is already living inside of you. What I'm here to do is maybe sometimes I'm going to knock that out of you, and that's okay. That's what a coach does. But I want to show you how to knock it out of yourself. I want to bring the conversations to the surface. I want to show you how to find your creative endeavor, the 5-year-old boy living inside of you that's building lasers, that's going to go on to create 19 different companies and change the world for the good. Every single one of us has that. So that's all we're about, man. And I think for me, realizing like you don't have to be a dad to be a father figure. You don't have to have children to be an example for other men. And this came from a podcast I had with Ryan Mickler, host of the Order of Man movement and podcast, the biggest men's podcast movement in the world. I asked him, what makes a man? And he said, every man should be a father figure. Doesn't mean you don't need to be the children's dad. But for me, I took that and I was like, okay, I need to start coaching Little League. And I don't yet have children in my life. It's what I pray for most, and I believe God will bring that to me. But where I'm at in the season of my life, I can still have an impact, not just on one boy. You know, my nephew, I'm very close. I live a mile and a half from him, but I can have an impact on 12 or 24 or 36 boys. Now when I'm walking through the grocery store, because I live in the same town and city where I'm coaching, I'll see these kids, Coach Frank, they're screaming at me from down the aisle. And it's like, what's that little voice? So it's so fulfilling, though. Helping that next generation. So I love that this is where we started today, Mark. I think that this is important.
You know, Frank, I have this older brother, Doug, who was born prematurely with, this is back in the day, it's 1959. So this is a clue, right? And so he was born about, I think it was 2 or 3 in the morning. And when they called the doctor told the nurse, he says, listen, Laura Lee, my mom, I want you to hold her legs together because she can't give birth until I get there. Because at that time, doctors were this hierarchical type of thing inside of the medical industry. They still are to a certain extent. And as a result of that, my brother had oxygen deprivation that caused some brain damage. And he didn't have any calcium in his legs. So his feet were pointed backwards and they were just like rubber. And he was in pain the whole time. So he was screaming every night, every day and night. He just screamed for the first 6 years of his life. And my parents would then work shifts. So they're working these, my dad would watch my brother for 2 hours. My mom would watch him. You just rock him, try to keep him quiet. You know, you got another 5 kids in the house. And so it's crazy. And the amazing thing was my brother ended up, Steve Prefontaine, well-known to any of us that know Nike. Steve Prefontaine was the first sponsored runner by Nike when it was still Blue Ribbon Sports, and then through Nike, and he's kind of like, you know, he's definitely hero material. He came to our school, our grade school. He ran around the gym, and encouraged us all to wear dolphin shorts and get out there and run. And my brother and I, after leaving the stadium, we looked across the street and there was the Little League. There are 2 Little League fields. And you had mentioned Little League and being a catalyst for these kids, which is a fantastic thing. He said, I want to play Little League. So we went home and my dad said, if you want to be in Little League, great. I want to be a coach, because he wanted to make sure that my son was successful at that. My brother could only catch because he couldn't run because his legs were all whacked out and they were in braces, but he could catch. And he would come home, right after, he would immediately quick walk into the bedroom, close the bedroom door, because I shared a bedroom with my 2 brothers and my 3 sisters were in another bedroom. And then he would just cry his eyes out because he was in so much pain. But he wanted to be brave. He didn't want to be taken off the team because he was in pain. And eventually he could run the bases. And eventually he became one of the fastest runners in the state, running cross country, no longer having braces on his legs. And now he runs a mission down in Nicaragua. He became a radical Jesus freak in a good way, in a very honorable way, which I love that. He's the coolest guy in the world, and smart. He even invested in Apple stock. He is Forrest Gump. And he's like one of my big iconic spiritual leaders, a guy that no matter where I'm at in life, I can call him and say, hey, Doug, what about this? What would you do here? And he's always there going, you know what? Let's think about this. Let's walk through it. And he's just a font of wisdom and love. So yeah, Little League is a freaking awesome catalyst for all of us, right? I mean, I'm sure you get as much out of it as they do, right?
Oh, more. I would tell, I would always call my sister on the way home because, so my sister's got my nephew, and then I would drive up and I would, coach the game, and I'd leave home with no kids. And it's like, so I'd call her and I'd debrief, and I'm like, she's like, you were more excited. You were screaming, while they were winning more than they were. And I felt like I was more into the game many times than they were. But it brought back play into my life. That's a necessary component for the work that we're doing, in addiction recovery, which we'll get into with, probably your wife's story here a little bit. The role that play plays in neuroplasticity, the ability to change your brain. So I 100% got more out of it. Now, one thing it did do is, because I'd been a bodybuilder for 15 years, is I hadn't done an overhand throw since I graduated high school, maybe a handful of times. So I started throwing batting practice though multiple nights a week. So I went from throwing 0 with all this muscle tissue on my back and in my scap. Now I'm throwing, 500, 600 times every single night. I ended up creating some real bad problems that I'm now working through with a manual therapist. He literally looked at me and he's like, you have a problem in your back that only you could create, because you needed 15 years of building muscle in your back. Then you needed to throw a baseball 600 times for a year straight. So I'm working with these subscap issues. I don't have great contractions in my pec. And it's been about 6 months of weekly work, but we're making some progress. But yeah, I absolutely loved it. And
yeah, mobility is so funny because I was bodybuilding from the mid 80s through the early 90s. And it was the same thing where you lose mobility. I was strong. I looked good. I was a nice V, and I couldn't throw to save my life. And my tennis game sucked.
Yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about, right? Because you're unique. Obviously, based upon the first 20 minutes of this conversation, people are like, this dude is like nobody we've ever had on the show before. But you got this background in your intelligence, and then the chemist, and then building lasers, and kind of nerdy and geeky, but then he's playing tennis, and then he's bodybuilding, but then he's in the Air Force. It's like, so not a great question here, but I think you know where I'm going is how did this nerd that's building things and inventing things become a bodybuilder? And then what role has bodybuilding played in your success as an entrepreneur and just in life in general?
Oh, I know. I love that, dude. This is on so many levels. This is an important question. I was 135 pounds and 6'3" when I entered the military, entered the Air Force. God. Right. So you know what a stick I was, right? But I could probably beat you in the mile, the quarter mile, the 2.5 mile across country run back then, right? When we talk about miles, right? We don't even talk about kilos back then. We didn't have them. State tennis contender, and played state tennis, and that was really important, really formative. Hanging around all those tennis playing mentors of mine led me into the game, and that became a really important thing. But I think what I got into bodybuilding because there was a power lifter who I worked with. We actually worked at different shifts, like we would do a handoff to each other. And eventually we ended up, we said, hey, let's work the same shift. And I want to teach you how to bodybuild because I think that you could do it. You're athletic enough. You've got enough strength, right? But I think that you would really like it. And so I said, okay, give me 2 weeks. Give me 2 weeks. And for 2 weeks, what I did was I did pull-ups every day, right? I did dips and I did push-ups so that I could at least build up some sort of resistance to, resilience, I should say, and strength. And then I started hitting the weight. So I was doing 225 my first, bench presses just because it was easy to do that because I'd already prepped myself for it. But Scott Hazelton was the guy's name. Scott, if you're out there, man, I love you, brother. We were also,
Scott, what's up?
We were also great buddies in church. He was the guy that could hit the really high tenor notes, but he was this brute of a man. He was 250, 260, 5'10", and just a monster, right? A great guy. Scott's great. But what he taught me was that the art of bodybuilding, outside of the fact that every Sunday, we didn't know anything about diet back then. All it was, right? You ate like a fool as much as possible, and then you leaned out. Then you ate like a fool. Then you ate here leaning. You know what leaning out was, man? Frank, we used to take and buy those 4-foot tall bags of unsalted popcorn that you'd get at like 7-Eleven back then. You say, oh yeah. It's just anything to put, you're right. And we didn't know carbs versus protein versus fats versus anything. And of course we didn't have roids. You know, we were in the military, we didn't make any money. But the other was we didn't even understand the art of that. What we did understand is that if you bench press like this, and you go do deadlifts and you did right and you do reverse, that you could finally build up, and you did supersets on everything, right? And you did this in 5 sets of 8, 10, 12, that you could actually build some serious mass and muscle definition. And Scott,
I think a lot of people need to hear that. I don't want to cut you off here because I know you're gonna I want to finish the rest of the story, but you're hitting on a very important piece though right now. Is you get a lot of people in the beginning, right? You don't need the fancy stuff. You need hard work. You need consistency. You need to stick with it for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. I see it all the time. I see these young men. It's like their first 6 months, they're emailing me or they're reaching out like, what's the best exercise to grow the inner part of my chest? And I was like, dude, you need a chest before you focus on building the inner part of it. Like just put on some math. I'll see it at the gym here locally. Like I live in the suburbs, so a lot of high school kids that train at the gym kind of around the time that I go as well. They're sitting like sideways or they're doing the one-handed thing. I was like, dude, you just need deadlift, squats, and bench press for the next 18 months. Then start adding in the other things. Like, so I think that's a very important part. And I'm sorry to hijack your story.
No, dude, that is exactly right. And what Scott used to call me Civ Man. This is pretty funny. Because he goes, look, we're doing supersets today. We're going to do back and buys, right? We're going to do these sets. We're going to do them reversals, and we're going to use equipment like this. And I didn't understand, because back then we just had little notebooks that we'd write down how many sets we did, what weight we did, right? How long it took. Like, we didn't understand HIIT, high interval, high intensity interval training or anything, or how to balance cardio. I was already doing cardio because I rode my bike to and from work and to and from lunch, and I ran after work, and then I went and hit the gym, right? Start training. And the difference was, what Scott taught me, it was so important, was we are training. We are not weightlifting. We are training, right? We are disciplined. We're going to do these things. We're going to do them in this order. We're going to do on these days, and we're going to rest on these days. And on every Sunday after church, we would go to Skipper's Fish and Chips, which is this fish and chip chain, and we would compete to get who could eat the most pieces of fish. Like, this is breaded white fish, right? And chips, and it was $5 for all you can eat, $4.99 all you can eat, right? And we would just eat, 25 pieces of fish, 26 pieces, 27, till the fish are swimming in your stomach. You're just that, right? And that was our protein. That was our max meal for the week. And then we'd work it all off during the rest of the week as we'd trim it down. But it's pretty funny. But I think that discipline of understanding that this is not some willy-nilly thing, like you're talking about, the one, the guys doing the one arm, sitting wrong or sitting sideways, or they're basically texting most of their workout, right? You get in there, you're focused, you're training, because this training is a discipline. That discipline is going to affect every part of your life. Let me do one more bodybuilding one. So I'm at Wizard Academy in Austin, Texas, in Buda, Texas, back in 2006. We had just sold a company called PR Web. My business partner and the guy that founded PR Web, David McGinnis, sold that for quite a bit of money, $28 million. And he said, "Hey, have you been to Wizard Academy?" And I said, "I haven't been. I've heard about it. It's got an incredible following for people that are communicators and scientists." And he goes, "Yeah, let's go there." And so we went there and we did this thing called Magical Worlds. And I'm sitting next to this guy that is the perfect V. He's got the perfect shape. He has the movement, but he also got some mobility, and he's super smart. And so we break for lunch, and they have an incredible spread at the back end of the classroom here. And the class was taught in a church from the 16th century. So it's a mock-up of one, but it looks like one. It's got candles in the fireplaces, and it's incredible. And so or the back. And what he's doing is he's taking a plate. He takes a full-size plate, takes a little spoon, like a little spoonful of everything that he thinks might be valuable on the spread. And then he takes a little tiny bit of it, puts it in his mouth. His eyes go skyward, and you could see, and then he'd like take more of it or no more. You just move it over to the side of his plate. And the guy's name is Sean Phillips. He and Bill founded a company called EAS Nutrition. They were kind of, right. And they basically started to a certain extent, they were big guys in the fitness movement, especially in the bodybuilding movement, Muscle Magazine and some of those things.
Well, they say Bill Phillips, that was Body for Life, right?
Yeah, BFL, yeah, Body for Life, yep. And
yeah,
so
I mean, that was the original kind of transformation. You see obviously every online coach now will do a 30-day or 60-day or 12-week transformation. Like the original fitness transformation that just blew up the internet, blew up the world was Bill Phillips, Body for Life.
Yeah. And Sean was CEO. Bill was the face of the company and chief marketing officer. And you would hold up, right, when you would start BFL, your Body for Life, you'd hold up a newspaper with the date on it. And then you do a 6-week or a 12-week transformation. You hold up another newspaper with today's date on it and show what a radical change you'd made. It was 5 to 6 meals a day, a balance of fat, protein, carbs, right? It was a very smart system. Really great guys. They built EAS Nutrition, sold it for $160 million back in the early 2000s. And they were, and before that, Metrics. They worked with Metrics before that and did some of those. So really great. But seeing somebody that disciplined, that spiritual, that connected, right? Just a super neat guy, super smart, IQ off the charts type smart, and who just wanted to make impact. He wanted to make impact with men. He started a company called Full Strength back then, and I think that's the byproduct of when you start getting into training, not just weightlifting, right? Not just bodybuilding. You start getting a discipline. Is you become an attractant for other people looking for that foundational stability, that leg of the stool you can anchor on. So when lust, desire, whatever comes in, that's going to pull you off track, it's going to try to mess you up. You've got, you know what? I think I'm going to go throw back 300 pounds and figure out, right, how to recalibrate myself, because the rush I'm going to get out of that, the fulfillment I'm going to get out of that, the discipline that's going to come from that, because it is discipline. One more rep is discipline, right? It's healthy. It makes you
love that. And speaking to, the training versus working out, piece, like one thing I recite all the time on this show and in our work and in the coaching of the men is how you do one thing is going to be how you do everything. Right. And, the success that you had, the disciplines, like everything you got out of that, that's obviously carried over into your business ventures, your relationships, everything else you're doing, like was birthed out of the bodybuilding. And same thing with me, the success that I've had in coaching and bodybuilding and sales and leadership and relationships, everything in my life. A lot of that is lessons that I learned, disciplines, character traits that I developed by willingly putting myself in uncomfortable, very uncomfortable situations with getting ready for a show. So I love that so much.
I don't know if you know, but just this weekend, Wade won 2 divisions of I can't remember if it's national or the world title in Venice Beach. Wade is our president, Wade Lightheart, and he won 2 division titles it was his first year of senior. He just hit 50 and he killed it. I'll send you some photos. He just killed it. So vegetarian. He killed it. Vegetarian. Like I couldn't. I don't think I could be a vegetarian, but also I don't think I could kill like Wade has proven that there's nothing stopping you.
I think that there's some, I don't know if that's a gene thing or something. I 100% know I could not be a vegan and have no desire, thought ever want to. No, I didn't know that he was going to be. I knew he had some things coming up that he was working towards. So I've been partners with Biooptimizers for years. So going back to 2017 when I started Frankridge Fitness, they were one of the first companies that I joined the affiliate program with. I've done a lot of things with magnesium, mass signs, all the different things. So yeah, it's a great transition here with bringing up Wade and Biooptimizers, because I think it really gets to your newest venture, your newest project here, which is Nootopia. So tell us a little bit about, the origin story, genesis of you creating Nootopia, and then how you kind of, came together with Wade and the team at Biooptimizers over there.
Well, so thanks, Frank. So I appreciate that. One is I had been interested in this area of neurological performance back in the 90s, and I built a company around that and human growth hormone secretion, doing what's called a secretagogue, actually developed out of Florida, where you're sitting. And I did that in the 90s, and I had my own health crisis with hypothyroidism back in the early 90s as a result of being on a drug called Accutane. I was a white rat for an acne drug called Accutane back in the military, and it stuck with me. It's very difficult to get out of your system.
And it was tore your immune system up or something, right?
Oh, completely. Your bowel flora goes to nothing. You can't create your own vitamin B. It sticks in your muscles. It actually plants itself in your muscles. So think about me being a bodybuilder training, regularly. Also an endurance athlete, doing the Hood to Coast run in Oregon, where you run from Mount Hood to the coast of Oregon, 179 miles with you got a group of people you're doing a relay with. And then doing century bike rides and doing, biathlete events. So doing all that and 10 years of doing that. And I got hypothyroidism, doing EWOT one day, exercise with oxygen therapy, at a bed and breakfast owned by an ND, MD, the guy that got me into natural health. I suddenly got this sore that opened up the size of a silver dollar under my lat, and it oozed clear fluid, and that clear fluid was Accutane. 10 years after my last dose, 10 years of being a hardcore, practicing athlete, and this stuff is still in my body, right? So really, really bad stuff. So yeah, it was awful. And I got super depressed with thyroidism. And then I got on thyroid, this ND, MD said, hey, let's figure you out. Let's debug what's going on. Cause I was just really not in a good state. And and so I started taking, at the time, Armour Thyroid was the gold standard. Now it's not. You shouldn't probably use Armour Thyroid. Tell your doctor you want Westroid, or you want Thyrovans, also Florida company. It does New Zealand Thyroid. But started doing that, and it changed my life. I went from being sick to literally feeling superhuman in less than 6 months. In fact, I was flown out to do a venture capital deal by a couple of geeks who were in the laser technology business, the industry I kind of had grown, and some venture capital people and some movie theater owners. And I walked into the room, and I could feel the temperature in the room was a little bit escalated because they couldn't come to an agreement, and I was able to do a deal within about 45 minutes. And I just like, dude, you are back. In a way, when you do something that you already know you have the capability to do, or you have one of your core traits or skills or talents that you're given, right? And everybody that has, when you find your talents, it's really important. We have a responsibility to exercise those talents. Those weren't given to us. Those weren't bestowed upon us to just blow away. They're a core thing that makes us human and makes us spiritual. And if we don't do those, we're letting down the people around us. We're not fulfilling our mission, our calling. So it's really important. And I'm not saying that if you've got this core skill, you're a badass guitarist and you've got a job that pays the bills. I'm not saying go leap out at the 0.01% chance that you're going to be the next Eddie Van Halen, right? And make it. But I am saying that maybe you lead worship, or maybe you do something meaningful with it, or maybe you serenade your kids at night before you put them to bed, right?
You mentor younger, up and coming artists, or you start a side hustle, or you create a course on how to play the guitar, and you sell it online. You sign up for ClickBank, and you become an affiliate, and then we'll make you a millionaire anyways.
Dude, that is my entrepreneurial language, brother. That is it's so important. It's so important. So anyhow, we have 3 kids, and we have all 3 kids at home. The first one in a hot tub, the second one in a birthing chair, and the third one on a couch in front of the fireplace. Livy, and she still works for us today. She's our special ops. She's our in charge of special ops. So the last one, they gave my wife 4-oxycodone. The midwife gave my wife 4-oxycodone, and she fell in love with that drug. And for the next decade, she's on painkillers until she eventually commits suicide using those drugs and a number of others that she had collected, and some people. You start making bad decisions as a result of the drugs and addiction calling to you. So thankfully, I had this incredible friend in David McGinnis, the guy that founded PR Web, and he said he literally flew his private jet down, picked me and my kids up, flew us up to Blaine, Washington, which is right on the Canadian border on I-5. And he said, here's where you can live. Here's a view of the ocean. Go do whatever you're called to do. And so for the next 4 years, I just started figuring out what makes people addicted, what kind of neurochemicals can I start combining to help people beat and address addiction? And then what happens if you're not an addict? How will these affect you? And I owned a brainstorming software company at the time called Idea Fisher, and then we formed another division of that called Thought Office. And I was in business with the founder of Century 21 Real Estate, Marsh Fisher. And so I had this base of a lot of customers who love to think clearly and think creatively and solve problems. And so I started sending them test tubes, blank test tubes, full of powder and said, here, mix this with water. It's going to taste like crap. And tell me how it makes you feel. And so after doing 3,000 of those tests, I came up with a formula that made them perform really well and make them feel like they were at another state, another operating state, more focused, happier, more lucid, more capable of doing lateral thinking and creative thought, and more energized without feeling like they were on some kind of an artificial high or caffeinated to the max. And that became this solution that, and then I started working with a rehab center and using it to help people that were just coming into the rehab center, helping to detox them immediately to get off whatever meth or coke or street drug they were on, or alcohol, and to help them think clearly. And here's what I found, Frank. If I could get, and this kind of came as a result of working with these people, right? Saying, why are you here? Like, why are you in rehab today? Why were you stoned when you walked off the plank of that cop car? And why didn't you come in earlier? And they said, well, I got to tell you, Mark, it's embarrassing, right? I'm going to go to rehab. That means I have no control over my own reactions. I don't have control. It's going to be expensive. I'm probably going to lose my job because either they're going to mark me as somebody, right, that's got a problem. So they're going to find reasons for me not to come to work anymore. And I'm going to be addicted to something when I get out anyhow. It's just going to be prescription. So in working with them and some of them were given up to 26 or 27 different meds over the course of a 6 to 12 week rehab session. And then they were going to be addicted to 2 to 4 of them. In other words, they were going to walk away with prescriptions to 2 or 4 of those, and they're going to be on those for the duration. And if they run out of those and they forget to do the prescription, because those drugs don't necessarily make them feel any different than when they're on their other drug of choice. So, and they say, well, so I'm just going to go back to my dealer anyhow. And so it was that kind of cycle. And I said, hold it. This is an epiphany. What you told me right now is that you have a hard time making good decisions. So if I could give you something that helped you clear up your mind so you could make better decisions. And then the second thing you told me was that when you're off of those drugs, you feel like crap. You want to hide in a corner. You got no dopamine left, no serotonin left, right? No GABA left. So you're a jittering pile of poop in the corner. What if I could make you feel really good and feel energized so you could execute on those good decisions you're making? That might actually create a little bit of success. And from what I know personally, from being a kid that was one of the least likely to succeed in my high school, right? Dropping out after my sophomore year, is I knew that if I felt a little bit of success, I could open that up and I could breed it into another piece of success, which would give me just a little bit more self-confidence. And then if I got that, right, and then I would have the confidence to approach people who had their stuff together, right? Who did have meaning in their lives, who would go, hey, kid, you've got potential. And they would feed that further. And now I didn't need, I could just operate on my own, systematic centering and my own energy and my own drive and my own dopaminergic cycles, right? As Huberman says, right? Give me a little dopamine drive and I can do anything. And that's kind of the cycle. So getting into that state was really important. And that's kind of what led to this was, you see somebody who you absolutely dearly love and you've got an emergency vehicle guy with a 6-inch needle going, we want to pierce her heart with this needle to restart her because her organs are going to be valuable to somebody else. And not that they're going to revive her and she's going to be the girl that you once knew. So yeah, tragic, but thank God that we were able to take that and turn it into something that maybe could help hundreds of thousands or millions of people in the future.
I mean, millions, if not billions, right? Because I think addiction is something that touches, maybe not every person directly, but there's an indirect path, probably usually within 2 to 3 degrees of separation. It's either your immediate family or the next layer, cousins, uncles. Many times though, when it's a part of your family, like it's just everywhere. When I look at my family, it's like every layer, every generation, it's like, okay, I'm going to be the one that's going to break this. So I want to really dive in there though about how do we make better decisions? So what is it in the formula that is leading us to the path of making these better decisions? And then how do we change our state? So 2 questions we could probably, unpack a lot here. So number 1, what is it about the formula that is leading us to be able to make these better decisions?
So let me lead with, and this is going to lead into the formula, so I don't want to lose anybody here, is we, in the process of doing this, of working with addicts and also working with these high-performing people that we were giving these nutritional supplements to, these stacks, we call them stacks, right? Because they're a stack of different nutrients. When we started giving it to high-performance people, the brainstorming customers of mine, they operated at a brand new level, and they started talking to me about this kind of process, and we labeled it sick to superhuman. And everybody enters the spectrum of sick to superhuman at a different level. Like many people are kind of normal, right? Or optimal. We'll call it optimal, right? But a lot of people enter it at suboptimal, and some open it at sick. Some of us we regularly train, we eat good food, we sleep well, right? We try to have some kind of prayerful life that's thankful and abundant, and we also get a feedback from the people that we work with and we serve. We get this feedback, right, that elevates us and helps us to feel like we're contributing, right? When we get that, we're actually going in that super optimal range. And then every once in a while, when all the stars align and all of all the goodness that we're doing right comes together, then we get into that superhuman mode where we can kind of do there. What we wanted to do and was really important was how do you program in that, okay, I'm sick in this thing right now. I've got COVID, or I've got brain fog from COVID, or whatever. How do I go from there to from sick to suboptimal to optimal to super optimal to superhuman? How do I go through that phase and do it quickly? Or maybe I don't read well. So my sickness is I don't have the ability to grok words on a page. Well, there's podcasts. There's ways to listen to that. Maybe audiobooks, right? Or maybe a mentor that can show you graphically what goes on. There are ways to kind of beat these things. But what we found was that you can program your states. And in programming your states, we had to address every underlying element that keeps us from high performance. So the first thing we found was that people had, they typically had some kind of inflammatory condition from either poor food or just from the diet they're eating. I live in Iowa, on the Mississippi, the glyphosate river, right? There's a lot of crappy food that comes. Hy-Vee, the store that is the grocery store locally, the organic section, I could fit on my desk. And so, right, so getting healthy food is problematic in some of these areas. So a lot of us are operating from these inflammatory conditions. A lot of it is that the food that they've got is tainted with various components that are not healthy, or they've been bred like that. So inflammation is a real problem. But if you start muting inflammation, if you start controlling inflammation, and you get your body loaded with anti-inflammatories in a good way, like omega-3 oils, right? Then suddenly your body's not dealing with that inflammatory response, and you've got a little more energy and ability to handle more stress, right? And that leads to adaptogens. We started finding that if we had an adaptogen layer, then you could handle stress better. You wouldn't get this big adrenal response. That typically when you have an adrenal response, right, that fight or flight, you start using up serotonin at a rapid rate. Since most of the serotonin is available in your gut, it's not actually in the brain. It's 90 to 95% of it is in your gut. And then it triggers through the vagus nerve and then it creates serotonin in the brain. When that happens, right, you're suddenly using up serotonin. You use up serotonin, you're going to get a fuzzy head. You're going to feel unmotivated, right? The serotonin is secreted because it's trying to protect yourself from your heart pounding out of your chest because you just got this adrenaline rush. There's no tiger there, right? You're not being chased by elephants. So suddenly your body knows how to correct itself, but it doesn't necessarily know how to recover from that correction really fast. So the other thing was, let's get an adaptogen layer. And then you go, well, hold it. What else is maybe affecting human beings? Well, oxidative stress is huge. So let's build an antioxidant layer, because if you don't have oxidative stress, then you also have more available ergs of energy for your body to operate with. So now we've kind of addressed a whole handful of these underlying problems. Then we said, where are people really deficient typically? And well, people are pretty deficient in their bowel, their bioflora, right? And so their vitamin B levels might be deficient. So let's program in some methyl B vitamins, methyl being they're a methylated group of B vitamins. So they're more bioavailable to the body, right? And then, okay, so now we've got this great prep. We've built this perfect plate, this canvas that we've started painting on. We've got all these colors available and we've been painting it really well. So now what do you want to do? Do you want to focus? Do you want to be happier, or do you want to have a better mood? Do you want to be motivated, right? Do you want to have more of an elation experience? Do you want to have more of this open-hearted kind of connection with other people, right? What state do you want to be in? So we built the stacks to kind of program in or allow you to access that state very easily. So that's the power of building these stacks. And then we built these stacks to do things like here's, right? Here's we're now going to be calling, I think we're going to be calling hyperfocus. We're actually coming up with a new name now, right? But it's called focus savagery. So you look at that cap, every one of those layers is built and measured and weighed specifically for you, for your weight, your age, your sex, how often you eat, what you eat, how often you exercise, how much coffee you drink or tea you drink a day, how much water you take, how you sleep, right? Your sleep cycles. All of those things are programmed into this cap so that it'll be optimum for your neurology and physiology and your goals. This specific one is a replacement for things like Adderall. So this isn't, I'm not a doctor, and I kind of don't even play one on the internet, but it's super important for people to realize that there are things that you can use, especially with your doctor. Like if you're on Adderall, there are some things you can do and you can take that are going to improve your ability to focus, and maybe even start chipping your prescriptions down so that you've got a minimum of drugs, a minimum of meds, and an optimum of nutritional supplements that are going to get you into that state of high performance, focus and follow through, focus and motivation, focus and drive, focus and completion, focus and reward, right? Huberman's huge on reward. And so it's really important. Or let's say that you want to be in kind of flow state. You want to just be able to kind of pull ideas from the lateral thinking capacity that your brain you've been blessed with, right? Like some idea that you remember from 8 years ago that you now need to apply, some research paper you read on certain nutrients or certain chemicals, or something that helps you accomplish whatever your job is, right? Well, that's where something like brain flow comes in. So this is, again, a capsule inside a capsule with Celastris paniculatus. And this improves your mood. It improves the serotonin levels, but it also improves and increases the level of acetylcholine in your brain with a little tiny bump to GABA. And GABA is a thing that makes you feel basically relaxed without losing focus or energy. It's really powerful for that. So you can do that as well. So we started building these stacks and then making these stacks, programming specifically for our clients by customizing them and making it so that you can say, I need to be in this state for this length of time for this thing I'm doing, like this podcast we're having today, where I took a brain flow and I took an upbeat. So those get me into my serotonin level. So I've got good connection with you, Frank. And it's got good acetylcholine flow so I can think about and recall some of those ideas that I wanted to talk about with you. And then I also have my motivation level is pretty high. So I've got a little bit of dopamine, but I've got enough GABA. And thanks to Zamner spray, there's Zamner, right? I've got enough GABA that I don't go over the top and suddenly don't communicate with you. I just like overrun you. Hence the fact that I just took some GABA.
Wow, that's fantastic. Did you see that first one you showed me is customizable, specific to our needs, or those are the stacks that you've created? Like I go on the site and then I look at stacks, or I think I heard you say it's actually made for the individual. So is this a customization process that people would go through in getting these made for specifically for themselves, or am I way off? Like I didn't catch that.
No, dude, you nailed it. So here's the deal. When you come onto the website, when you come onto Nootopia, right? And you probably have a link for your listeners, but when you come onto Nootopia, the first button you have at the top of the page is take your neurochemical test. It's free and right. And so we're going to ask you a battery of questions, and we're going to get an idea. We're going to get a feel for which neurochemicals you're positive in, you've got a good level of, and which ones you may be lacking. And then you're going to take another test, right? Following that, again, these are really simple, really fast. We're going to take another one. We're going to ask you again, what's your age, your weight, your sex, right? Your biggest challenges, your biggest opportunities, how you eat, how you exercise or train, how you sleep, what meds you might be on, what vitamins you take. And then we're going to have you do these sliders at the end of this test. And these sliders are going to kind of be your goals. Like I want more focus, but I don't want jitteriness. Like I don't want a bunch of caffeine. I want to be more relaxed, but I don't want to lose focus when I relax. I want to have better mood, because I'm in a piss poor mood all the time. So I'm in a better mood, but I also want to be focused. So there's ways for us to adjust each of these. And that's what we do. We say, well, Frank, what do you weigh right now?
About 255 ish. Big boy.
you are big. How tall?
I'm 6'3". So I'm not your buddy. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't born for bodybuilding. I've always struggled to really compete at a high level. I was born for the NFL. Offensive line.
That's awesome. Offensive line. I was going to say, yeah. Mr. Linebacker.
I graduated high school at 225. I've just always been a big, just thick dude.
Yeah.
Like I have no problem. I look at pizza, I put a pound on. I think about running, I put more weight on. So the challenge for me has always been getting lean. It's easy for me to hover around. Like this is just my staying weight. Like I don't have to try to be 255 pounds. I just have to live and not try to be any leaner or any bigger. And this is where my body wants to.
Where do you get ripped? At what like when you're 12%, are you staring at a 12 pack or a 6-pack?
No, that's the last thing. That's the last thing that comes in. So my arms, my chest, I've always held this wide chest line. I've had friends that have like been jealous of it for years. So my arms, chest, and my legs, I will be 12, 13% body fat, and I'll have veins in my quads. The abs and lower back are the last thing that go for me always. Like that's like the final digits, like for me to get the revealed abs.
I love it. So at your weight and your height, we would do a very specific customization of each of these caps and each of our powders, like Nectar X. And we would customize it for you. And if you said, you know what, I spent 10 years doing pre-workouts. I did craze. I did enough of it to know what, right. Yeah. Exactly. Bodybuilders are the biohackers of the universe, man.
We used to take the Jack 3D, the one that's no longer on the market. You probably remember this. The Jack 3D.
The DMAA. Yeah.
Yes. And we would put it in a red line, shake that up, and that would be our pre-workout.
Oh man, yeah.
That's the world that I'm coming from,
dude. We were so back in the 80s when I was bodybuilding. We would, to get the next 3 or 4 reps out, is we would break amyl nitrate right under your nose, take a big hit of smelling salts, right, and and then pass out from it's crazy. So yeah, I know the gig. So yeah, so the deal is that everybody's physiology and neurology is very unique to them. And we found when we started doing this process, when I started doing these first 3,000 formulations to get to the first winning combo, is that as I customized it, instead of having 30%, 42% of the people effective, that was kind of the range of people that were effective, of positive effect, I would have another 20 to 40% that would be neutral. And then I'd have, 5, 10, maybe 20% who would have a negative effect with the formula. When I started customizing it, I started finding that I could get to 92 to 97% effectiveness. And when you start doing that, then you go, okay, this is going to be reliable enough that I can actually customize for them. It took a lot of data to do that, by the way. Millions of data points eventually, over 10 million now, taking those data points, we were able to actually go, oh, okay, with a very high degree of reliability, I could say, okay, I know exactly how much of these nutrients and components and B vitamins and the stack, the nootropic stack, and the choline donor and the vitamin D and all of these components that interact with each other in a positive way. I know exactly how much of that to get to a guy your weight, your age, who've done the kind of adrenal stress you've been under, the kind of lifestyle you've had, and the kind of current training that you do, and your sleep habits and the rest. And we can build it just for you. And so every one of them is built like that.
That's fantastic. And guys, we'll put the link to Nootopia. If you don't go anywhere past just filling the questionnaire and getting this information, that in of itself will equip you with an understanding of at least your baseline starting point, which makes me the next thing I wanted to talk to you about, right? Because we've talked a lot about Huberman. We mentioned him, before we started talking, his name's come up here a handful of times. His work is centered around giving people the practical tools like that they can begin to go out in their life to increase some of these neurochemicals. You need more dopamine, create a big vision for your life, ice bath, 250x increase, serotonin. We know you can live in a state of gratitude. You can have a prayer practice, acetylcholine and adrenaline, get some early morning sun exposure, make sure you have proper sleep. So there's these real-time tools, things that we can actually live out and do in our life. Where does something like the products and formulas that you're creating, where do those work in congruence with the stuff that Huberman teaches, or just these real-time practical tools?
I love that. That's a great question, Frank. Here's the deal, is a lot of us don't know, and when I say a lot of us, I'll include myself, until I started developing these solutions, I didn't understand that I could actually program my state. I could have a state of gratitude. I could have a state of happiness. I could have a state of super effectiveness. I knew when I would get on Adderall, I do Adderall about twice. I used to do Adderall about twice a month back in the early 2000s. I had a big software company growing, and it was kind of my, okay, this is where I'm going to really get some work done. But my employees called it the asshole drug. So, because whenever I took it, they would come in to see me. They go, dude, you're just a jerk. And, I know you're on that here. We're just going to we're going to slurk backwards and get out of your office, and we're not going to talk to you until that thing fades away. And the same thing some people find when they're on like modafinil or some of these other like super drugs or super nutrients. And so the problem some of us have is we don't know, one, what does that state feel like? And two, what are the ingredients that make up that state? Like, what are the things I need to do to get to that state? There's a thing called neurolinguistic programming that like Tony Robbins teaches and Grinder and Bandler taught and it's a process of basically anchoring, like finding something physical and aural for you to anchor with. And if you do that anchor and like, okay, I want to feel like this, so I'm going to do that anchor, and that's going to get me closer to that goal of feeling like that. And then I'm going to go do that thing that makes me feel like, or that I need that feeling or that presence or that state change to get me, right? So it's super important for people to realize that they're ultimately responsible for the state change, but there are ingredients like these capsules and powders and drinks and sprays that we make that help you to do two things. One is get to that state, right? And like call up that state, like that state comes to you. Stephen Pressfield, the great Stephen Pressfield, who's a writer. He wrote a book.
Had Stephen on the show. Yeah, Stephen's great.
Oh, dude, yeah, you know the guy. He's the man, right? And so when you're facing what he calls the resistance, right, you need some ingredients. And I love the fact that he, coming as a Marine, he said, we always name the enemy, right? If it was the Viet Cong, it was a VC, right? We're going to get the VC, right? You got to name the enemy. So that's a part of it. That's an ingredient that you can use. You go, okay, what is the thing? Stephen calls anything that keeps you from being your greatest self, from doing your mission you were called to do, anything that keeps you from that is called the resistance. So naming it the resistance. Dude, Frank, I love that book so much. Right. And it's called The War of Art, not the art of war, not Sun Tzu. It's right. And it's I would take people to lunch and I would read it to them. Like, I need to take you to lunch. You've got a situation. I want to help you with that situation. Let's go learn about the resistance. Let's go name it. And then let's go claim it. Right. We're going to go.
How well has that been received for you? Because I feel like every time I try to do that, they just want to get up and leave.
Oh, dude, it's great. What's fun is that I read the preamble, when he talks about himself pointing the various objects at himself and, his lucky keychain, his lucky, right? And then getting out and sitting down and writing until he's starting to write badly and not caring about the quality of the work, just doing the work. And I think this thing, and you can say this in a spiritual term or physical terms or whatever, but doing the work calls the muse. Doing the work brings out the people. Like, I told you I've got mentors in my life that are incredible. Matt and Wade are great mentors in my life, right? Chastity's my lab assistant, partner in crime. She's she's over here somewhere. Hey, a mentor in my life is I think when you decide that you're going to make the commitment, you're going to make the change, right? That when you're ready, the teacher appears. The guy that raised the money for Nike, I sat with him at the back of a home presentation for Amway back in the 90s. We're listening to his presentation. We both I have no idea who this guy is. He's just very well dressed, has a very cool hat on. And I turned to him and I say, are you ready to go? And he goes, yeah, I'm ready to go. I didn't go there with him. I just said, I got to, I don't want to leave alone and be the total jerk in the crowd. And so I leave, we leave and I walk outside and who are you? He goes, my name's Jack Nichols. And I said, who are you? He goes, well, you probably don't know my name. He goes, but I'm the guy that basically raised the money that started Nike. And then I did it with Mentor Graphics and Floating Point System and Avia and Fabricland and 100 other startups in the Pacific Northwest. And, it was like, oh, cool. What are you doing?
What's that guy doing at an Amway meeting?
I know. Oh, no, it was he got conned into it, right? It was one of those, it was that curiosity approach. Hey, let me talk to you about something I'm doing. And he invested in startups, right? So he wanted to go see this startup this guy was talking about. It wasn't quite a startup. So anyhow, it was great.
I got plenty of friends that have made their money in Amway. It just wasn't for me. Here's something that's coming to me though. Like obviously knowing that this kind of birthed out of, helping addicts. I know there's a big part of it. You talked about the high performers as well. I want two questions around addiction I want to ask you. My experience has been that addicts are high performers that haven't unlocked their high performance yet. I'm just curious your thoughts around that.
So Matt Gallant, CEO of Biooptimizers.
I don't know him super well, but I know Matt. Yeah,
you know who he is. Yeah. So Matt was an addict. He's been clean for 13 years. All right. And it is absolute. Matt would be the first one to tell you that I was a high performer in everything I did, including drugs and alcohol. Right. I was the guy when I was young, when I was in high school, I could clear a 6-foot bong. It was one of my claims to fame. Right. So I knew, right. I could do, it was when I went to a party to drink, I was the guy that ended up falling asleep on the pool table and wake up the next morning and make everybody omelets, right? Pass out. And so, it was pretty fun. There's some truth to that, by the way. So I think that, like you said, the way you do a thing is the way you do everything, right? And it's so true. I think that here's one of the cool things. If you are an addict, if you are jonesing for something, you are probably a badass entrepreneur that just hasn't located that vehicle. You haven't found that. You found passion. Redirecting that passion isn't that hard. It's just a shift. You've already got some commitment to something. Just shift that commitment into something healthy, something loving, something valuable. Man, that is the shift. That is the power. And the reason I built a radio at 5.5 and I built a laser at 9.5 was because I was committed. I was all in. When I was playing tennis, dude, I ran not only for every ball, I ran for the balls that were already out of play. I didn't stop. It was hardcore. And I think if you treat life like that, if you have something that is compelling you to the point that is destructive, it's so easy. There's a twist, one bit in your that you shift and go, oh, hold it. What if instead of this negative thing, what if I just found what is a positive thing that would make me feel like this? Because there's a billion positive things for every one addiction.
Brother, I don't know if you're feeling this like the way that I am. Like literally, like I want to fly to wherever you are right now and just continue this conversation in the same room as you, because brother, you and I are operating on such the same wavelength right now. This is why the men in our program are crushing it. I'm not a porn addiction recovery coach. Like that's not what I do. I'm an elevator of men, but the men that I'm called to elevate are the ones that haven't figured out how to break through their struggles with pornography. But once they come in and we just help them reframe, that's what I heard you say, is you just need to reframe the way that you look at something a little bit, a little tweak in how you're seeing this, catapults you on into the life where these guys are crushing their businesses. They're getting promotions, $60,000 raise in a quarter for one of our clients. Another guy went on to have his biggest financial year ever in his online coaching business. Other guys are starting second side hustles because we're addicts, but we haven't unlocked that high performance yet. So I love that so much. Second question I want to ask you around addiction is, do you ever see it? Has it ever become a problem where people get addicted to the nootropics, creating these state changes? Because it can be an easy way, right? As I pop these pills, I now create this new state of mind for myself. Has there ever been a thought or somebody that has gotten more on the addiction to
it
that?
It kind of goes the opposite way, Frank. Instead of getting addicted to the nootropic, you get fulfilled by the state that you go into. And so instead of needing, like, there's a magic that happens when you can trigger that state. And the nootropics help you get there, right? But again, they're a lever. They're not the state. They're a lever to the state. And so after a while, you can go, oh, I can get that state anytime I want. I just go there. When I get on the tennis court, I immediately go into state and I know exactly how to hit the ball. Same as when I was 16 years old, I'm 60, right? So very important. One of the other things is you can start finding the combination of nutrients, sleep, healthy relationships, right? Reading, listening, meditation, prayer, that help you to accomplish those states at a higher level, at increasingly higher levels. We recently created this solution called Collagenius. Collagenius is a platform for everything else. The way I think of it is you've got an OS, right? You've got an operating system. And then you put applications on top of that operating system. Collagenous is a super concentrated mushroom and collagen piece that it's literally the equivalent of 1.5 pounds of mushrooms every dose, right? So 17 grams is a dose. It tastes, and it's not flavored. It literally tastes like chocolate milk or like a mocha in your coffee. It's incredible. It starts a thing called BDNF, brain-derived nootropic factor, which is the precursor to neurogenesis, the creation of new brain cells. And when you get these blooms of new brain cells, you get to program them any way you want. You've got an addiction, that's a neural pathway that's triggered, an emotional thing that's triggered that you react to. You want to create some new ones? Get a little BDNF going, get a little neurogenesis going, get a little new thought going, right? And instead of going towards the thing that's pulling you down, you get to go to the thing that is raising you up, that's elevating you and everybody around you. So really important stuff to understand. So
no, love that. I don't think I actually you touched on it. It was getting addicted to the nootropics, and now as you're answering this, is like I didn't actually. It was a horrible question for me to ask. So I apologize. Like
no, it's great.
About what I like to lean on. We talked about Anna Lemke, right? And I like to lean on her definition of addiction when I'm asked about it, or just to preface these. And she defined it as the repeated or continued use of a substance and or behavior despite negative consequences to self and or others. There's no negative consequence for putting myself in a healthy state of mind. It's only going to produce more good. So that in of itself removes the ability for it even to become an addiction. It can become something that you constantly lean into. And maybe you could see that there's some weakness there if you always need to lean into popping a pill when we know there's real-time tools. I don't know. I'd be curious your thoughts around that. But no, I absolutely love that. And I'm going to need to get my hands on some of that Collagenous. Dude,
we are sending you a bottle of Collagenous as we speak.
Let's go.
So, 1-800-Collagenous.
Yeah. And for everybody listening, this may be worth an episode checking out on YouTube, because this is the first time we've had a guest recording this episode from inside of an actual working lab. I mean, he's got scientists and assistants and experts creating products literally in real time. So we're getting a real cool behind the scenes here
as we speak. Yeah, I love the fact one of the things that addiction is one of the biggest byproducts of addiction is a lack of self-esteem, and it's a spiral. It's a negative spiral, right? I go and do the addictive behavior, right? Or I take the addictive substance. I know that I shouldn't, right? Everything tells me I shouldn't. I go down, I take it or I do it, and I end up feeling less than I was before. It's unempowering. It's disempowering, right? It neuters us as men. And when we start looking at that, and we can look at it right outside and go, not only am I better than that, I got something better to do. I got somebody better to be, right? The other side of that is the attractive magnetic force of doing the right thing the right way, right? Is if people suddenly come into your life who are of that same being, that same nature, that same spirit, and suddenly you find this core group, these people that are on the same mission. They're the guys you high five every day because they feel that groove that you're on. They know you're with them, and they also support you. They go, they're the phone call away. They're the text away. Hey, dude, I'm feeling like shit. I don't feel like the man I should be. I don't feel like this. I want to break down. I blew it. How do I? And they're the ones that go, hey, dude, that was back whenever 15 seconds ago, right? That was 5 minutes ago. Come on, let's go do this thing. Or you're better than that. Or I love you. Or you're important. Or you're going to make a difference, right? And that's the cool thing about state change is when you, and by the way, I love Side Hustle 101. I'm a Gary Vee fan from the word go. I think it's so important for us to take and fill our lives with the things that are going to be valuable to us. Like, I'm constantly, I buy I think about 6 domains this weekend. Whenever I feel I've got I hurt my back, so I can't do deadlifts, and I hate that. Right. And so, I'm in recovery, man. Hey dude, I'm in recovery. Is when I can't do that thing, I have to go reinforce the fact that I'm not an idiot, that I'm not weak, that I'm strong, right? That I am alpha, that I'm made to do important things, that I'm going to make a huge contribution, right? And so what I do is I go buy a domain around something I think is an interesting idea that I can flesh out. Even if I never act on that, I've got for $10, I've got this domain that is something meaningful that whenever I feel low, like I feel, you know what, I didn't do my best today. I felt bad, or maybe I am an idiot. Maybe what my teacher was telling me in 10th grade when they announced it over the intercom that you're one of the 3 least likely people to succeed, right? Is maybe when that voice comes back and beats me up, I just go and I call up my GoDaddy account. I look at my domain and go, haha, no, I'm not an idiot. I have this incredible resource and I just need to go do that side hustle just to keep my, right? And even if I never do it, the thing is, I know that I can and I know that I'm capable, right?
Yes.
So anyhow, yeah. Side hustles rock.
Mark, brother, we're definitely getting you back on for round 2. That GoDaddy domain story was just the icing on the cake, man. We literally are the same person. You're just maybe a decade ahead of me on some of these things. I don't know if I buy 6 a week. I do buy at least 1 domain every single week, though. Like we'll be on a men's group call. So I meet with a men's group every Saturday morning, and it's Christian-based entrepreneurs. So we're always talking about ideas and things like that. So one guy will bring something to the table literally Saturday morning. He's like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about this business thing," and literally as he's talking, I'm on GoDaddy. I'm like, "All right, domain." I'm like, "Ron, the domain. I'm about to buy it right now. You have to get this thing $20,000 from me." It's just fun, right? And it's like, so I got a little backlog. And then when the renewal, email gets sent to me, if it's not something I've done with, in the first 2 years of buying it, a lot of times I just let it run out. But I love that so much, Mark. We're definitely get you back on for round 2. So share with the audience. Obviously we talked about Nootopia. We'll link that down. I recommend guys going through and doing that neurochemical test. If people want to learn more about you or are you on social anywhere? Are you hanging out? Yeah. So plug a couple things where people can find you, and then we'll bring today's conversation to a close.
Awesome. Facebook, Mark Effinger. Okay. All one word. EFF is in Frank, INGER. So Mark with a K. Mark Effinger on Facebook. Medium.com and Quora. Again, Mark Effinger on medium.com and Quora. And I'll leave you some links on that as well. Yeah. Medium is awesome. It's long form, works great. And Quora is really interesting. And I'll be doing some Reddit stuff in the upcoming weeks and some YouTube stuff as well.
The Quora and the Reddit stuff is probably great data research for you, customer feedback, inquisitive, what people are looking for out there, what struggles and challenges people are having on a regular basis. You can go into a lab and solve the problems.
When I'm a serial entrepreneur, not because I just, I have this desire to be the wealthiest guy in the world. I'm a serial entrepreneur because I love starting things and helping people start things. And I love taking them to the liquidity event because I think that's really fun. I think it's really fun when you create value from nothing and then suddenly sees it and says, I think that's worth 5 million. I think that's worth 10 million. Right. And it's everybody can do that wants to do it. A lot of people just don't believe that that's possible. And that side hustle, you'd be surprised at what that side hustle can become. I asked Tim Ferriss, right?
Right here, right? The podcast, it wasn't even a side hustle. The podcast was a pure, I don't want to say mission. It was a passion project. It was like, I'm not looking to make money. I'm actually going to spend money every single week to put these conversations out there. There was zero plan for monetizing the podcast outside of if I get it big enough, maybe I could bring on some sponsors. And I've done 5 episodes with a paid sponsor. That's it. But out of that birth, now a company that will do multi-6 and probably 7 figures within the next 12 to 18 months. So definitely power to the passion and the side hustles for sure.
Yeah. Luke's story and I were talking about that same thing this last week is, I said, Luke, how did this start? He goes, it was accidental. I just wanted to talk about my path as I was discovering new things. And the best way for me to learn it was to teach it and then to interview people that were doing, at the forefront of it, and boom. And he said, I never expected this. And by the way, this was from his, $2.5 million home in Austin, so yeah, it's amazing.
No,
it's amazing what can happen.
Yeah, he's a model of what can be done, with just the power of podcasting and the conversations. So that's amazing. Well, we end every episode here with the same question. Obviously the title of the podcast is the Superhuman Life. We've touched on my story here, and I think we've probably pulled your answer out to this question through this conversation. Let's get it all succinct in one final question. So as we bring today to a close, Mr. Mark Effinger, Mr. Noots himself, how would you define living a superhuman life?
Oh, dude. It's waking up every day knowing you get to do the thing that you were called to do and getting to do it with vim and vigor, right? Through health, right? Wellness, prayer, right? Thankfulness, right? Abundance mentality. And then also, I think getting to be with some great people that are always committed to your success, your life. Right? And again, those people will show up as you do the thing that you were called to do.
Amen, brother. And you're walking that out. You're a model and perfect example of that. Guys, wake up every day, chase your passion, surround yourself with the right type of individuals, but know that you have gifts. You have that 5-year-old building lasers living inside of you.
Absolutely.
And hopefully today's conversation has maybe helped bring some of those things to the surface. So if you guys are getting value out of these conversations, you can continue to support us in one of two ways. First off, if you haven't done so yet, leave us a 5-star rating and written review right there on Apple, whatever platform you are listening to. But most importantly, there's someone in your life that needs to hear this message. Maybe they're struggling with some addiction. Maybe they're struggling with not getting to the right state of mind. Maybe they just need a sense and source of motivation to begin to take the steps to unlocking their true potential. Do us a favor, but do them the blessing by sharing this conversation with them. But for Mr. Effinger, Mr. Newts himself, Frank Prince, Superhuman Life, we love you guys, and we'll see you next week.